Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to look at the 12 principles of animation. The 12 basic principles of animation were introduced by Disney animators Ollie Johnson and Frank Thomas in their 1981 book, The Illusion of Life, Disney Animation. The principles are based on the work of Disney animators in their quest to produce more realistic animations. The main purpose of these principles was to produce an illusion that cartoon characters followed basic laws of physics like gravity, weight, and volume. But they also dealt with more abstract issues such as emotional timing and character appeal. Even though these principles were originally intended to apply to traditional hand-drawn animation, the principles still apply to 3D computer-generated animation. And so, whether you're learning 2D traditional hand-drawn animation or 3D computer-generated animation, it is your job as an animator to learn and at the very least be aware of these principles, these basic principles, skills of animation to produce better looking animations. Number one, squash and stretch. The purpose of squash and stretch is to give the sense of weight and flexibility to drawn objects. It can be applied to simple objects like a bouncing ball, or more complex objects like a human character, or the face. Taken to an extreme, a figure stretched or squashed to an exaggerated degree can be very comical. It can have a comical effect. For example, characters that stretch beyond what they're supposed to gives it a comical effect. In realistic animation, however, the most important aspect of this principle is that the object's volume does not change when squashed or stretched. If the length of the ball is stretched vertically, its width needs to contract horizontally. Number two, anticipation. Anticipation is used to prepare the audience for an action and to make the action appear more realistic. For example, when you jump up, you have to bend down first, build up energy, and then jump up. Or a golfer making a swing has to swing the club back first before he can go forward. The technique can also be used for less physical actions, such as a character looking off screen to anticipate someone's arrival, or turning his eyes first in anticipation of turning the head to look at something. Number three, staging. The purpose of staging is to direct the audience attention and to make it clear of what is more important in a scene. Staging is the presentation of an idea that is so completely and unmistakably clear, whether that idea is an action, a personality, an expression, or a mood. This can also be done by various means, such as placement of the character in the frame, or the use of light and shadow, or the angle or position of the camera. The essence of this principle is keeping focus on what's relevant and avoiding unnecessary detail. Number four, straight ahead action and pose to pose. These are two very different approaches to the drawing process. Straight ahead action scenes are animated frame by frame from beginning to the end, while pose to pose involves starting with drawing a few key frames and then filling the in-betweens later. Straight ahead action creates a more fluid, dynamic illusion of movement, and it is better for producing realistic action sequences. On the other hand, it is hard to maintain proportions and to create exact convincing poses along the way. Pose to pose works better for dramatic or emotional scenes where composition and relation to the surroundings are of greater importance. Of course, you can always combine these two. A combination of the two techniques is often used by animators, so they would draw pose to pose and in the in-between frames would be straight ahead. Number five, follow through and overlapping action. Follow through and overlapping action is a general heading for two closely related techniques, which help to render movement more realistically and help to give the impression that characters follow the laws of physics, including the principle of inertia. Follow through means that loosely tied parts of a body should continue moving after the character has stopped, and the part should keep moving beyond the point where the character stopped. Overlapping action is the tendency for parts of the body to move at different rates. An arm will move differently than the head, and so on. A third related technique is drag, where a character starts to move and the parts of them take a few seconds to catch up. These parts can be animated objects like clothing or antenna on a car, or parts of a body such as arms and hair. Number 6. Slow in and slow out. The movement of objects in the real world, such as human bodies, animals, vehicles, etc., they need time to accelerate and slow down. For this reason, more pictures are drawn near the beginning and the end of an action, creating a slow in and slow out effect in order to achieve a more realistic movement. This concept emphasizes the object's extreme poses. Inversely, fewer pictures are drawn in the middle of the animation to emphasize faster action. This principle applies to characters moving between two extreme poses, but also inanimate objects moving. For example, a car that is taken off, it needs time to accelerate, pick up speed, travel, and then when it comes to a stop, it needs to decelerate or slow down. This is also called accelerate, decelerate, or ease in and ease out. Number 7, arcs. Most natural action tends to follow arcs. Animation should follow this principle for greater realism. The bouncing ball will follow an arc trajectory instead of straight lines. One of the few things that does not move in arcs is robots or mechanical objects. They tend to move in straight lines. But almost all natural movement, it follows arcs. Number 8, secondary action. Adding secondary actions to the main action gives a scene more life and can help to support the main action. For example, a car. The car drives by, the antenna goes back, and it is emitting smoke out the back. The antenna and the smoke are secondary actions to the car moving, but they emphasize the action of the car moving. The important thing about secondary actions is that they emphasize the main action rather than take attention away from the main action. Number 9, timing. Timing refers to the number of drawings or frames for a given action, which translates to the speed of the action on film. On a purely physical level, correct timing makes objects appear to obey the laws of physics. It gives it more realism. An object's weight determines how it reacts to outside forces. Timing is also critical for establishing a character's mood, emotion, and reaction. It can also be a device to communicate aspects of a character's personality. Number 10, exaggeration. Exaggeration is an effect especially used for animation, as animated motions that strive to perfect imitation of reality can sometimes look very static and dull. The level of exaggeration depends on whether one seeks realism or a particular style, like a caricature or cartoon. The more exaggeration you use, the more cartoony it feels. The classical definition of exaggeration was to remain true to reality, just presenting it in a wilder, more extreme form. It is important to employ a certain level of restraint when using exaggeration. If a scene contains several elements, there should be a balance in how those elements are exaggerated in relation to each other to avoid confusing the viewer. Number 11, solid drawing. The principle of solid drawing means taking into account forms in three-dimensional space, or giving them volume and weight. The animator needs to be a skilled artist and has to understand the basics of three-dimensional shapes: anatomy, weight, balance, light and shadow. One thing in particular that Johnson and Thomas warned against was creating twins, characters whose left and right sides mirrored each other and looked lifeless. Number 12, appeal. Appeal in a cartoon character corresponds to what would be called as charisma in an actor. A character who is appealing is not necessarily sympathetic. Villains and monsters can also be appealing. The important thing is that the viewer feels the character is real and interesting. There are several tricks for making a character connect better with an audience. For likable characters, a symmetrical or particularly baby-like face tends to be more effective. A complicated or hard to read face will lack appeal. And that is it. All 12 principles of animation. I hope that these videos were helpful to you guys. And I also hope that you've enjoyed the videos as much as I enjoyed making them for you. And remember, as always, if you like the videos, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe. And I will see you on the next one. Thank you.